The neon lights of Station Nexus 7 flickered through the toxic haze that perpetually shrouded the criminal underworld's most notorious meeting place. Deep in the station's belly, where even the security drones feared to patrol, the Crimson Cantina buzzed with the whispered conversations of mercenaries, smugglers, and killers from across the galaxy. Kexmora had earned her reputation in places exactly like this. For 400 years, she had been the galaxy's most feared assassin, a living nightmare that species told their young about in hushed tones. Her 8 articulated limbs moved with predatory grace as she navigated between tables filled with beings that would terrify most civilized worlds. Her natural camouflage shimmered like liquid mercury, making her appear as little more than a shifting shadow to those who dared to look directly at her. The Silthek were born killers. Their homeworld of Veltar had forged them in eternal warfare, creating beings with reflexes that could process information faster than most species could think. Their compound eyes could track 17 different targets simultaneously, while their razor-sharp limbs could strike with the force of industrial machinery. In the galactic criminal underworld, hiring a Silthek assassin was like purchasing a natural disaster with a specific target in mind. But even among her own species, Kexmora was legendary. She had eliminated the warlord of Centauri Prime while he stood surrounded by 1,000 bodyguards. She had poisoned the entire ruling council of the Zephyrian Empire during their most secure conclave, making it look like a tragic accident. She had once infiltrated a fortress moon protected by quantum shields and gravity wells, killed her target, and escaped without leaving a trace of evidence that she had ever been there. Her mandibles clicked with satisfaction as she remembered each perfect kill. 4 centuries of flawless execution had made her name whispered with terror across 100 worlds. The hooded figure in Booth 7 had specifically requested her services, offering to pay triple her already astronomical fees just for a consultation. That alone should have been a warning sign. In Kexmora's experience, clients who paid premium rates usually had premium problems. "You're late," the contractor said as she approached. The voice was electronically distorted, filtered through a vocal scrambler that made identification impossible. Only the faintest outline was visible beneath the heavy cloak, humanoid in shape, but that described half the species in the galaxy. "I arrive precisely when I intend to," Kexmora replied, her natural voice producing harmonics that made nearby glasses vibrate. She folded her limbs beneath her in a motion that looked graceful but positioned her for instant violence. "You requested," the whisper of Silthek, "Here I am, speak your contract." The datapad that slid across the grimy table was military grade, its surface gleaming with the kind of security encryption that cost more than most beings earned in a lifetime. Kexmora's compound eyes scanned the information, processing details. Faster than most computers. Target designation, Kim Hyun Woo. Species, human. Occupation, diplomatic trade negotiator. Current location, mining colony, planet K442b. Security rating, minimal civilian protection. Estimated difficulty, routine elimination. Then she saw the payment offer. Her mandibles clicked in rapid succession, a sound that made several nearby patrons nervously check their weapons. 5 times her usual rate. For a single human diplomat, stationed on a backwater mining world with barely any security presence. The mathematics made no sense. "This human male negotiates mining contracts," she said, her voice carrying the slight hiss that indicated confusion in her species. "He arranges the extraction of rare metals from asteroids. He has no military training, no combat experience, no personal guards worthy of concern. Where is the challenge that justifies this payment?" The contractor's laugh was like grinding metal. "You've never hunted humans before, have you?" "I have eliminated 17 members of their species over the past century," Kexmora replied with professional pride. "They die as easily as any soft-skinned mammal. Their reflexes are pathetically slow, their strength laughably inadequate, their durability non-existent. I once killed a human male simply by striking him with moderate force. Their bones shatter like glass. Those were humans living on civilized worlds," the contractor said. "Soft humans, weak humans, humans who had forgotten what they truly are." The pause stretched uncomfortably long. "Kim Hyunwoo lives on a colony world, a world they've adapted to, a world they call home." Something in the contractor's tone made Kexmora's camouflage ripple with uncertainty. In 4 centuries of killing, she had learned to trust her instincts about danger, and every instinct was suddenly screaming warnings she didn't understand. "Consider the extra payment hazard compensation," the contractor continued. "You'll understand why when you meet them." Within 3 hours, Kexmora's personal stealth ship had cleared the station's docking bay and engaged its quantum drive toward the Outer Rim territories. Her vessel was a masterpiece of Silthek engineering, invisible to most sensors, armed with weapons that could level city blocks, and equipped with life support systems that allowed her to survive in environments that would kill most species. Within minutes, as the stars stretched into lines around her ship, Kexmora reviewed the contract details one final time. Every piece of intelligence suggested this would be the simplest assassination of her career. A lone human diplomat on a sparsely populated mining world, protected by nothing more than basic civilian security systems, yet the payment suggested otherwise. And in 4 centuries of professional killing, Kexmora had learned that when clients paid premium rates, they usually had premium reasons for doing so. Her ship's navigation system chimed softly as it calculated the jump to K442b. 3 days, of hyperspace travel to reach her target. 3 days to plan what should be a routine elimination. As her ship entered the swirling tunnel of hyperspace, Kexmora settled into her pilot's chair and began reviewing everything she knew about human physiology and psychology. Professional thoroughness had kept her alive for 4 centuries, and she wasn't about to become careless now. After all, she had a reputation to maintain. Kexmora's stealth ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the K442b system, and immediately, every sensor on her dashboard began screaming warnings. The planet below wasn't just inhospitable, it was actively trying to kill anything that approached it. Systems alert. Gravity readings at 1.8 standard galactic measurement, her ship's computer announced in its cold, mechanical voice. Atmospheric composition toxic to 97% of known species. Radiation levels approaching hazardous. Thresholds. Recommend immediate departure. Kexmora silenced the alarms with a sharp gesture of one limb. She had infiltrated worlds that existed inside gas giant storms and planets where the very ground was made of crystallized poison. This backwater mining colony wouldn't present any challenge her advanced life support systems couldn't handle. But as her ship's long-range sensors began mapping the human settlement below, confusion crept into her mind like acid. The colony wasn't. Built like a survival outpost, clinging desperately to existence on a hostile world. It was built like a thriving city that had simply chosen this location because the residents liked it here. Massive industrial complexes sprawled across the planet's surface, connected by transport tubes that moved through environments that should have required the most advanced protective gear available. Mining operations carved deep into mountain ranges where the local wildlife included creatures that her ship's database classified as extreme threat level. Yet the humans had built their homes right next to nesting grounds for predators that could bite through starship hulls. "Computer, analyze local fauna threat assessment," she commanded. The response made her compound eyes widen in disbelief. Warning: local ecosystem contains 47 species classified as capable of eliminating trained military personnel. Apex predator designation: Cytherian stone crushers. Height: 4 meters. Weight: 2 tons. Natural weapons: bone plates capable of deflecting plasma rifle fire. Recommended engagement protocol: orbital bombardment. Yet the humans had built a recreational park less than a kilometer from where these creatures roamed freely. Kexmora engaged her ship's cloaking systems and descended toward the colony's outer perimeter. Her vessel touched down in a canyon that provided perfect concealment while offering clear sightlines to the main settlement. Through her advanced optical equipment, she began her reconnaissance of the target zone. What she saw challenged every assumption she had about human limitations. The colony's central plaza buzzed with activity as dozens of humans went about their daily routines. But these weren't the soft, weak mammals she had eliminated on civilized worlds. These humans moved with a casual confidence that spoke of beings who had never known fear of their environment. Her target, Kim Hyun-woo, stood near a massive mining drill that had apparently suffered some kind of malfunction. The machinery was the size of a small building, its components designed for automated systems to handle with robotic precision. Yet Kim simply walked over to the broken assembly, wrapped his arms around a support beam that weighed several tons, and lifted it into place with the same effort most beings use to pick up a drinking glass. Kexmora's mandibles clicked in rapid succession as she recalibrated her optical sensors, certain they were malfunctioning. But the readings remained consistent. This human diplomat, who spent his days negotiating mining contracts and trade agreements, was casually performing feats of strength that would challenge a fully equipped Silthek warrior. Impossible, she whispered to herself, adjusting her position for a better view. As if summoned by her disbelief, one of the massive mining machines suddenly exploded in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. The blast would have been lethal to most species at that range, superheated fragments flying at velocities that could penetrate advanced armor plating. Any rational being would have thrown themselves to the ground and sought immediate medical attention. Kim Hyun-woo simply raised one hand to shield his face, let the metal fragments bounce off his exposed skin, and continued working. Blood ran down his cheek from where a piece of shrapnel had cut him, but he just wiped it away with the back of his hand, like it was sweat from a mild workout. "Computer," Kexmora said, her voice tight with confusion. "Analyze human physiological readings. From target subject. Analysis complete. Subject shows no signs of cybernetic enhancement. No powered armor detected. No genetic modifications beyond baseline human parameters. Subject appears to be standard biological human operating within normal performance ranges for the species." The words made no sense. Standard human performance didn't include ignoring injuries that would hospitalize most galactic species or lifting machinery designed for automated heavy equipment. Movement in her peripheral vision drew her attention to another human, a female designated in her intelligence files as Park Soo-jin, listed as a geological survey specialist. Soo-jin stood on a platform approximately 30 meters above the ground, examining some kind of mineral scanning equipment. Without warning, the platform gave way beneath her feet. Kexmora watched in fascination as Soo-jin plummeted toward the rocky ground below. The fall would shatter the exoskeleton of any Silthek, would kill most species on impact. But instead of screaming in terror or attempting to activate emergency systems, Soo-jin simply adjusted her body position during the fall and landed in a perfect crouch that absorbed the impact like she had merely stepped off a low stair. Then, she stood up, brushed dust off her work clothes, and sprinted away toward another section of the colony at a pace that would exhaust a trained Silthek warrior within minutes. "This is not possible," Kexmora said aloud, her natural camouflage rippling with agitation. "Humans are fragile. Their bones break easily, their muscles are weak, their reflexes are pathetically slow." But the evidence before her eyes told a completely different story. These humans moved through their hostile environment like they had been specifically designed for it. They treated gravity that would crush most species as if it were barely noticeable. They shrugged off injuries that would require major medical intervention for beings from civilized worlds. They performed feats of strength and endurance that defied everything she knew about mammalian physiology. As she watched, a group of human children ran past her concealed position, laughing and playing some kind of game that involved leaping between boulders that stood 3 meters apart, jumps that would require careful calculation, and powered assistance for most species were being performed casually by youngsters who couldn't have been more than 10 standard years old. The local wildlife that her ship's computer had classified as extreme threats wandered freely through the colony's outer areas. But instead of the humans cowering behind defensive barriers, she watched a maintenance worker named Choi Minho simply wave at a massive armored creature that could have easily torn him in half, as if greeting a harmless pet. The creature, a 2-ton predator with natural armor plating and claws like vibroblades, actually stopped and allowed the human to scratch behind what passed for its ears before wandering away peacefully. For the first time in 4 centuries of professional killing, Kexmora felt something she had almost forgotten existed: uncertainty. Not about her mission. She was still confident she could eliminate her target when the time came. But uncertainty about what she was actually dealing with. These weren't the humans from her previous contracts. Those had been soft beings living comfortable lives on civilized worlds, protected by technology and infrastructure from anything that might challenge them. These humans were something else entirely. Something that moved through a world that would kill most species within hours and treated it like home. Something that might actually present a challenge worthy of her reputation. Her mandibles clicked thoughtfully as she settled in to continue her surveillance. This contract was becoming far more interesting than she had anticipated. Kexmora had chosen the perfect moment to strike. The colony's evening meal brought most of the humans together in their central dining facility, leaving the outer perimeters lightly guarded. Her target, Kim Hyun-woo, sat with his back to the main entrance, engaged in what appeared to be a casual conversation about mineral extraction quotas with his colleagues. The Silthek assassin activated her natural camouflage, her body becoming nearly invisible as light bent around her chitinous shell. 4 centuries of experience had taught her that timing was everything in assassination work. Strike when the target is relaxed, comfortable, surrounded by the illusion of safety. Her 8 limbs moved with deadly silence as she approached the compound's outer fence. The security sensors were primitive by galactic standards, simple motion detectors and thermal imaging arrays that couldn't penetrate her advanced camouflage systems. She had infiltrated fortress worlds protected by quantum barriers and gravity shields. This mining colony's defenses were practically non-existent. Her razor-sharp limbs cut through the perimeter fence like it was made of paper. The metal didn't even make a sound as it parted before her natural weapons. She slipped through the gap and began her approach toward the dining facility, already planning her escape route through the colony's maintenance tunnels. The moment her feet touched the compound's interior ground, every alarm in the settlement began screaming. Intruder alert, perimeter breach detected, all units respond immediately. Kexmora's camouflage flickered with shock. Her compound eyes darted frantically as she tried to understand what had gone wrong. There had been no sensors in the ground, no pressure plates, no detection grids that her reconnaissance had missed. Yet somehow the humans had known the exact instant she had entered their territory. Contact confirmed. Single target, grid reference 7 Alpha, initiating containment. Protocols. The voices coming through the colony's communication system were calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying in their efficiency. There was no panic, no confusion, no frantic scrambling that typically accompanied surprise attacks. These humans had been ready for her. More disturbing still, they knew exactly what she was. Target displays Silthek movement patterns. Recommend standard counter-stealth procedures. Deploy wide-spectrum illumination. Massive floodlights erupted across the colony, bathing every surface in brilliant white light that made her natural camouflage completely useless. But these weren't ordinary lights. They cycled through multiple spectrums, including frequencies that made her exoskeleton glow like a beacon against the darkness. For the first time in 4 centuries, Kexmora experienced genuine panic. She ran, her legs pumped with desperate speed as she sprinted toward the colony's outer edge, seeking the cover of the rocky canyon where her ship waited. Behind her, she could hear the humans mobilizing with the kind of coordinated precision that spoke of military training rather than civilian security. Target moving toward Grid 8. Teams 2 and 3 establish containment perimeter. Team 4 sweep canyon approach vectors. They weren't just responding to her presence, they were predicting her movements. Every escape route she had planned during her reconnaissance was being systematically cut off by human units that moved with practiced efficiency through terrain that should have slowed them down. Kexmora leaped over a 10-meter ravine that would have required climbing equipment for most species, landed in perfect silence, and immediately changed direction toward a cluster of mining equipment that would provide temporary concealment. Her superior Silthek reflexes allowed her to process multiple escape options simultaneously, while her natural agility kept her ahead of her pursuers, but only barely. Contact lost at Grid Junction 12. Probable concealment in mining sector 4. Teams 5 and 6 establish overwatch positions. Target will attempt to break containment within the next 4 minutes. The precision of their prediction made her mandibles click with disbelief. They weren't just hunting her. They were thinking like her, understanding her tactical options and countering them before she could execute them. She burst from her hiding place and sprinted across an open area toward a maintenance tunnel that would take her underground. The tunnel network was her best chance of reaching her ship without being intercepted. But as she approached the entrance, floodlights erupted from positions she hadn't detected, and human voices coordinated her interception with mechanical precision. Target approaching tunnel entrance 7. Lee Dong-wook, you have containment responsibility for that sector. Confirmed. Moving to intercept. A single human male stepped into view at the tunnel entrance. He wasn't wearing powered armor or carrying heavy weapons. He looked like an ordinary maintenance worker, someone she could eliminate without effort. But something about his stance, the way he positioned himself with perfect balance and readiness, made every survival instinct she possessed scream warnings. Kexmora changed direction again, using her superior speed to avoid the confrontation. But everywhere she turned, more humans appeared with that same calm professionalism, that same terrifying competence that suggested this was routine for them. Minutes passed, then an hour. Her superior Silthek physiology allowed her to maintain peak performance far longer than most species. But even she had limits. Her breathing became labored, her movements slightly less precise, her natural camouflage flickering with exhaustion. The humans showed no signs of tiring. Target showing fatigue indicators. Maintain pursuit pressure. Do not allow recovery time. They had been tracking her for over an hour through terrain that would challenge trained military units, and their voices still carried no strain, no breathlessness, no indication that this pursuit was requiring any significant effort from them. Worse, still they were learning her patterns. Target consistently favors high ground approaches when cornered. Anticipate elevation change in next maneuver. Confirmed. Standard Silthek evasion doctrine suggests she'll attempt to use the mining platform structure for vertical escape. They weren't just hunting her with superior numbers, they were adapting to her tactics in real time, analyzing her species' natural behaviors and adjusting their strategy accordingly. What had started as a routine assassination had become a nightmare scenario where she was the prey and these supposedly primitive humans were the predators. Park Soo-jin's voice crackled through their communications network. Teams report ready. For final containment. Target has approximately 6 minutes of peak performance remaining before exhaustion becomes critical factor. The casual precision with which they discussed her physiological limitations made Kexmora's exoskeleton crawl with horror. These humans weren't just competent hunters, they were persistent predators on a scale she had never encountered. They didn't need to be faster than her. They didn't need to be stronger than her. They just needed to be patient, methodical, and absolutely relentless in their pursuit. And as her stamina continued to fade while theirs remained constant, Kexmora began to understand that she had made a terrible mistake. She had come here expecting to hunt a soft diplomat protected by primitive security. Instead, she had walked into the territory of apex predators who had been waiting for her arrival. The prey had become the predator, and for the first time in 4 centuries, Kexmora was the one being hunted. The maintenance tunnels beneath the colony stretched like veins through the planet's crust, carrying power conduits and atmospheric processors that kept the settlement functioning in this hostile environment. Kexmora had thought these tunnels would be her salvation, a maze of passages where her superior agility and knowledge of confined spaces would give her the advantage she needed to escape. Instead, they had become her trap. Every tunnel she entered led to another dead end. Every passage she chose brought her deeper into the colony's underground infrastructure, further from her ship and closer to complete exhaustion. Her natural camouflage flickered weakly as her energy reserves finally reached critical levels after hours of relentless pursuit. The humans had been herding her. Like predators driving prey toward a killing ground, they had systematically closed off every escape route, except the ones that led her exactly where they wanted her to go. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She hadn't been running from them. She had been following their plan. The final tunnel opened into a large maintenance chamber, filled with massive atmospheric processing equipment. The air hummed with the sound of machinery working to keep the colony's environment barely habitable for human physiology. But as Kexmora stumbled into the chamber, her compound eyes immediately focused on the figure waiting for her at the only exit. Kim Hyunwoo sat casually on a cargo container, looking completely relaxed despite having just participated in hunting down one of the galaxy's most dangerous assassins. He wasn't wearing protective gear or carrying visible weapons. His hands rested calmly in his lap, and his expression showed no trace of fear or hostility. He looked like exactly what his file said he was, a diplomat who spent his days negotiating mining contracts and trade agreements. "You're Kexmora," he said, his voice carrying the same calm professionalism that had characterized the entire hunt. The whisper of Silthek. 400 years of perfect kills. 0 failures. The nightmare that species tell their children about in the dark. Her camouflage flickered with shock. In 4 centuries of assassination work, no target had ever known her identity before she revealed it. Her reputation was built on being a ghost, a shadow that struck without warning and vanished without trace. "How do you know who I am?" she hissed, her natural voice producing harmonics that made the metal walls vibrate. Kim's smile was neither cruel nor triumphant. It was the patient expression of someone explaining something obvious to a child. "Because this was never about killing me, Kexmora. This entire contract was about sending a message to the galaxy's criminal underworld, about what happens when someone decides to target humans." The words hit her like ice water in her respiratory system. "That's impossible. The contractor was one of our people," Kim finished. "Human intelligence services have been monitoring assassination networks for decades. We know about every major contract placed against human targets. We know about every professional killer who's ever considered taking a job that involves our species." Kexmora's mandibles clicked rapidly as the implications crashed through her mind. The anonymous contractor, the excessive payment, the seemingly routine target on an unimportant colony world, it had all been orchestrated. She had been manipulated from the very beginning by the same species she had dismissed as primitive and weak. "You wanted me here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We wanted you specifically," Kim confirmed. "The galaxy's most famous assassin, the being whose reputation strikes fear into the hearts of criminals across 100 worlds, because when you leave here, and you will leave here, you're going to carry a message back to every professional killer in known space." Through the chamber's communication system, other voices began checking in with military precision that made Kexmora's exoskeleton crawl with understanding. "Perimeter secure, sir. All escape routes sealed. Underground access points monitored. No movement detected. Orbital surveillance confirms no additional threats in system." Kim noticed her expression of growing horror. "You're beginning to understand, aren't you? This isn't a mining colony protected by civilian security. This is a human settlement, which means it's a military installation disguised as civilian infrastructure." He stood up from the cargo container with the fluid grace of someone whose every movement was perfectly controlled. "Let me tell you about Earth, Kexmora. Let me tell you about the world that created us." As Kim spoke, Kexmora's understanding of human nature underwent a complete transformation. Earth wasn't just another habitable planet in the galaxy's catalogue of worlds. It was a death world so hostile that survival required evolutionary adaptations that went beyond anything most species could imagine. "Our homeworld tried to kill us for millions of years," Kim explained. "Ice ages that lasted for millennia, supervolcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun, asteroid impacts that wiped out entire ecosystems, predators that made the creatures on this colony world look like harmless pets." The chamber's lights dimmed slightly as Kim accessed the colony's main computer system. Holographic displays filled the air around them, showing images that made Kexmora's compound eyes widen in disbelief. Massive predators with teeth like vibroblades stalked through ancient forests. Creatures the size of starships moved through oceans that boiled with volcanic activity. Environments so toxic that they would kill most galactic species within seconds, yet primitive humans had not only survived, but thrived. Every human you've met on this colony carries the genetic legacy of beings who spent millions of years climbing to the top of the most vicious food chain in known space, Kim continued. What you see as our civilization is just how we organize for warfare. Our diplomacy is warfare by other means. Our trade negotiations are strategic resource acquisition. Lee So-young's voice crackled through Kim's communication device. Sir, all teams report ready. Target secured. Perimeter established. Awaiting further orders. Kim touched his comm unit. Understood. Maintain positions but hold fire. Our guest and I are having an educational conversation. He looked back at Kexmora with that same patient smile. Lee So-young isn't a geological survey specialist, by the way. She's our head of security, former military special operations, 12 years of combat experience across 7 different war zones. The revelation made Kexmora's camouflage ripple with shock. The human female who had casually leaped from a 30-meter platform and sprinted away wasn't a civilian scientist. She was a trained killer who had been pretending to be a civilian scientist. Park Soo-jin, the maintenance worker you saw earlier, former combat engineer, specialized in explosive ordnance disposal and hostile environment operations. Choi Min-ho, who you watched greeting the local wildlife, former xenobiology warfare specialist. He knows exactly which creatures on this world can be weaponized and which ones make useful allies. Kim gestured around the chamber, encompassing the entire colony above them. Every human in this settlement is former military, Kexmora. Every single one. We don't have civilians on colony worlds because we don't need them. Every human who volunteers for frontier duty is already a weapon trained for warfare in hostile environments. The truth hit her like orbital bombardment. She hadn't been hunting a soft diplomat, protected by primitive security. She had walked into a military base populated entirely by combat veterans who had been expecting her arrival and planning her capture. You think we're soft because the humans you've killed before lived on civilized worlds, Kim said quietly. Humans who had forgotten what they truly are. But colony humans, frontier humans, we remember. We carry the legacy of a species that made our own planet submit to us through superior violence. His expression grew serious as he leaned forward slightly. And now you're going to carry that message back to every assassin, mercenary, and killer in the galaxy. You're going to tell them what happens when someone decides to hunt Deathworlders. Outside the chamber, Kexamora could hear the soft footsteps of human soldiers maintaining their perimeter, patient and professional, and absolutely implacable in their dedication to their mission. For the first time in 4 centuries, she understood that she was completely outmatched. The weight of understanding crashed down on Kexmora like the collapse of a star. Everything she had believed about humans, about her own superiority, about the natural order of predator and prey in the galaxy, all of it had been shattered in the span of a few hours. The legendary assassin who had never known defeat now found herself completely at the mercy of beings she had dismissed as soft and weak. Kim Hyun-woo remained seated on the cargo container, his posture relaxed, but his eyes alert. Above them, the sound of boots on metal echoed through the maintenance tunnels as human soldiers maintained their positions with the patience of beings who had all the time in the universe. They weren't rushing, weren't showing any signs of urgency or stress. They were simply waiting for their orders, with the calm professionalism of apex predators who knew their prey had nowhere left to run. 4 centuries, Kexmora said, her voice carrying harmonics of disbelief. 400 years of perfect kills, and you knew I was coming before I even left Station Nexus 7. Kim nodded. We've been monitoring galactic assassination networks for longer than you might think. Every contract placed against human targets gets flagged by our intelligence services. When someone puts a bounty on one of our people, we don't just react, we plan. The implications staggered her. Human intelligence networks that spanned the galaxy, monitoring criminal activities with the same systematic thoroughness they had shown in hunting her. She had thought she was dealing with isolated colonists on a backwater world. Instead, She had walked into the web of a species that treated information warfare as naturally as breathing. "The contractor who hired me," she said, pieces of the puzzle finally clicking into place. "Agent Han Woo-jin," Kim confirmed, 20-year veteran of our External Operations Division. He's been running deep cover in criminal organizations for over a decade, building the reputation and connections necessary to place contracts with legendary assassins like yourself." Footsteps echoed closer in the tunnels above. Not the frantic scrambling of guards responding to an emergency, but the measured approach of soldiers executing a carefully planned operation. Each step was precisely timed, coordinated with military efficiency that spoke of years of training in exactly this type of scenario. "You wanted to know what happens when someone targets humans," Kim continued. "This is what happens. We don't just defend ourselves. We turn the attack into an opportunity to send a message to everyone else who might be considering similar actions." Lee So-young's voice crackled through the communication system with an update that made Kexmora's exoskeleton crawl with fear. "Sir, we've detected 3 additional ships entering the system. Unknown configurations, but sensor signatures match vessels commonly used by Zephyrian mercenaries. Shall we intercept?" Kim touched his comm device without taking his eyes off Kexmora. "Negative. Let them observe. In fact, make sure they get clear sensor readings of everything that's happened here. I want them to carry the story back to their employers." The casual way he discussed letting potential threats maintain surveillance of the situation revealed another layer of human strategy that went beyond anything Kexamora had encountered. They weren't just capturing her, they were orchestrating a demonstration for the benefit of other criminals who might be watching. "You planned this entire scenario as a performance," she realized. "Every detail," Kim confirmed. "From the moment you accepted the contract to the moment you leave this planet, everything has been designed to create a very specific impression in the galactic criminal community. The legendary Kexmora, the whisper of Silthek, completely outmatched by humans she thought were soft and weak." Park Soo-jin's voice joined the communication network. "Perimeter teams report ready for final phase. Colony lockdown complete. All civilian areas secured." She paused. "Though I should mention, sir, there are no actual civilians in this colony. Every resident is former military, as per standard frontier deployment protocols." Kim smiled at Kexmora's expression of dawning horror. "Did you really think we would establish colonies on Deathworlds using untrained personnel? Every human who volunteers for frontier duty has military experience. We don't send civilians to places like this because we don't need to. Our civilians are already weapons." The truth was worse than anything Kexmora had imagined. She hadn't infiltrated a mining colony protected by basic security. She had attempted to assassinate a military target in a fortress populated entirely by combat veterans who had been expecting her arrival. "You have a choice now," Kim said, his tone becoming more serious. "The same choice we offer to everyone who makes the mistake of targeting our species. You can die here today as a failed assassin whose reputation dies with her. Or you can return to your people and carry a message back to every criminal organization in the galaxy." The sound of weapons powering up echoed through the chamber. Not the crude energy weapons used by most species, but the distinctive harmonic whine of human plasma rifles calibrated specifically for use against heavily armored targets like Silthek assassins. "What message?" Kexmora whispered, her natural camouflage flickering weakly. Kim stood up from the cargo container, and for the first time, Kexmora saw him not as a diplomat or negotiator, but as what he truly was, a predator who had been born on a world that created nightmares. "That humans aren't prey," he said quietly. "We're the things that made our own nightmares extinct. We're the species that looked at a planet trying to kill us and decided to kill it back. We're the beings who turned environmental hostility into evolutionary advantage." He gestured toward the chamber's ceiling, indicating the colony above them, "and the hostile world beyond. Every human you see is the descendant of persistence predators who spent millions of years proving that no environment, no matter how deadly, could stop us from thriving. What you call our civilization is just how we organize our capacity for violence." Choi Minho's voice crackled through the comm. "Sir, the observing ships are maintaining position. They're definitely recording everything. Signal analysis suggests they're transmitting real-time data back to multiple locations. Perfect, Kim replied. Make sure they get good footage of our guest's departure. I want every criminal organization in the galaxy to see exactly what condition she's in when she leaves. Hours later, Kexmora found herself back in her stealth ship, systems restored and weapons powered down. The humans had escorted her to her vessel with the same professional courtesy they might show to a diplomatic visitor. But the message was unmistakably clear. She was leaving because they were allowing her to leave, not because she had earned her freedom. As her ship cleared the planet's atmosphere, she activated every communication system she possessed and began transmitting to assassination networks across the galaxy. Her retirement from professional killing was immediate and permanent, but more importantly, she carried a warning that would reshape the criminal underworld's understanding of human nature. I am Kexmora, the Whisper of Silthek, her message began. For 4 centuries I have been the galaxy's most feared assassin. I have killed beings from 1,000 worlds. I have ended the lives of creatures that could tear apart starships with their bare hands. But humans are something else entirely. Her transmissions spread through criminal networks faster than hyperspace communications, carrying a warning that would save countless lives by preventing the contracts that would have ended them. Humans are what happens when a death world spends millions of years trying to kill a species, and that species wins. They don't just survive, they conquer. They don't just adapt, they dominate. Every human is a walking reminder that somewhere, in this galaxy, there's a world so hostile that it turned an entire species into living weapons who think they're being peaceful. Within days, contracts targeting humans began disappearing from assassination networks across the galaxy. Veteran killers who had never known fear quietly declined jobs involving Deathworlders, criminal organizations that had considered humans. Easy targets began revising their assessment of risk versus reward. The Crimson Cantina on Station Nexus 7, where Kexmora had first accepted the contract that ended her career, became notably quieter whenever conversations turned to potential human targets. Assassins who had built reputations on accepting impossible contracts found themselves politely declining any job that involved Earth's children. A new understanding spread through the galactic underworld like a virus, carried by whispers and warnings from the few who had encountered humans and lived to tell about it. Some prey the criminals learned was simply too dangerous to hunt, and in the depths of space, human intelligence services monitored the communication networks and smiled with satisfaction. The message had been received, understood, and accepted. The galaxy's criminals had finally learned what humans had always known. There was a difference between being civilized and being harmless. The end.